Chris, one of the things that I think is so apropos about us having this conversation right now is that you came out of music. You were one of two people in your graduating who went to UT who got a full ride in music. And then for 10 years, you worked in music, you did music, and then suddenly the universe goes, well, maybe we have other plans. What happened?
Well, a lot happened. I got to do a lot of things I really wanted to do in terms of kind of success, metrics, I guess, benchmarks.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really having a very good time. I didn't feel great about the music we were making. And I have more of that kind of compulsion of an artist than, I guess, a capitalist.
Right.
And so I was not very happy musically, and I just sort of got unwell, I got to a point where I couldn't really play music without it causing sort of psychosomatic pain.
Yeah.
And I had to stop for a while.
And as a percussionist.
As a drummer, as a really loud drummer. In the 90s, it was a lot of loudness going, like crashing cymbals and,
Yeah.
Nirvana was the dominant influence on music in that decade. So yeah, we played pretty loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to make a switch.
So it's time to
I went on a journey.
So what happens on this journey?
I went to New York City. I spent about a year in Austin and spent a lot of time just sort of internally trying to understand what would I do, because I had been a committed musician for, at that point, I was, 26, something like that, 27. This was your
identity.
For 15 years leading up to that, starting in 6th grade or something like that. That's all I wanted to do. So, and it had happened, step by step, it had all come together. And I just thought about it and thought about moving to Santa Fe, thought about moving to, Mayberry and, or Kathmandu, somewhere far away. And then realized New York was really kind of the energy and the diversity that I was looking for and the change, and went up there and piddled in various jobs for a little while and got to the thing I mentioned to you the other day where I discovered the green movement.
Yes.
I don't think I told you about how that happened, though. Speaking of synchronicities.
Right, because this is what year is this? So we can ground us in
2002, 2001, maybe.
So what was the consciousness in climate science, ecology, as far as it was known in what would the newspapers would write about or what we would know? Because I know that there was. I was aware enough to know that there was some chatter about this, even though it wasn't getting the kind of headlines that we're seeing today.
Yeah. Everything that's happening now was predicted to happen. I may be exaggerating slightly, but maybe by the end of the century or 2050 if you were a doomsday negative case, worst case scenario person. So a lot of where we are today was definitely predicted and understood.
Yeah.
There's also, I should mention, and I didn't know this in 2001.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was reading a lot of the sort of environmentalist literature from the organizations that do great work. Mm-hmm. And the narrative I sort of see there are two worlds. There are environmentalists and conservationists in this world of trying to make, the planet stay livable.
Right.
And the conservationists don't have a voice really at all. They're essentially not heard in the political discussion on the environment or the social discussion or the media discussion. That's starting to change, but I actually brought, it's over there, but I brought a study or the preface to a book that was written in '97 that brings together the best of the conservation biologists to talk about nature's services, which is, in other words, our life support system services. The things that make life possible and keep life going are the wildernesses on the planet that function on their own, that precede us by hundreds of millions of years. Totally. And the point of that book from 1997 is to say we have a few decades left. At the rate we're going, we're going to destroy all of the ecosystems that sustain us before anything else happens. And they're right about that. We're at that 12th hour now. But the narrative in the climate community was, and still largely is, and it's not totally wrong or bad, but it's inaccurate that global warming is going to cause climate change is going to cause extinctions. extinctions will cause the downfall of the biosphere, and then it will be impossible to buy anything at Amazon.com or breathe, you know?
All right, all right, all right. As long as you put it in that order, okay.
Yeah, right. That's about the order of it too. But the idea that as the planet warms, the chaos of not having regular seasons anymore will shut down food production, will shut down the ability of ecosystems to sustain themselves year round.
Sure.
So what's being talked about now, just in the last few weeks, because of the fires in the Amazon finally getting coverage, is this, they talk about self-destruction, ecosystem self-destructing, which is really not a great term, but what they mean is that, like we talked about your body's vital organs.
Sure.
You know, there's a certain size and capacity that has to be present for that thing to continue to live.
Sure.
If you go past that red line, then it can't continue to
No.
produce the services to maintain itself
Yeah, and
that
so
are
then
required.
it shuts down.
And that's what's happening. It's not self-destructing. It's losing the resources it needs to sustain itself. Just like any other living thing, it has a certain amount of resources it needs. So anyway, the discussion in 2002 was if we can get a price on carbon, or if we can get emissions reduction rapidly, voluntarily, if we can get the world to wake up and stop burning gasoline and start burning corn or whatever, we'll be able to turn this around before it gets to be cataclysmic. And we have, 10 to 50 to 100 years to get there. And then if you read into the research, I was like, no, we don't. We don't have any time here. This looks really bad. It looks like we could lose coral reefs. I remember saying in 2007, it looks like we could lose the coral reefs by 2050, but if you really look at the literature, it looks a lot more like 2030. But I was afraid to say that out loud. Now that's common talk, that the Great Barrier Reef could be gone in 10 years, which of course would really devastate ocean life.
Yes.
The ability of the oceans to continue not only to produce our food, but to sort of function as a biospheric organ that keeps the planet in balance and keeps it productive and keeps the climate temperate and all the things we have to have.
So if we think of the planet as an organism, that has lungs and has different ways of renewing itself and rebuilding, and you're getting involved at that level, right?
I'm trying to talk about global ecology, global biosphere, and I'm still struggling to find the language on it, but biointegrity is the name of this project.
Yes.
Integrity means wholeness.
Yes.
The wholeness of life, that the planet, we've gone over the red line, as I said. We've already taken out, as in destroyed, more than 60% of the wildlife on Earth in the last 50 years. We've already destroyed or paved over at least 50% of the most productive ecosystems on the planet, the ones that give us the most life support services. And that's accelerating and continuing. We're not going backwards on that yet. We need to go the other way. So I lost your question in that, but
so give me some. Whenever I think of a major project, when I think of something like the Panama Canal or anything that was huge, that was done, that was completed, it always started with little steps, little foundational. What steps are you taking now? What steps can begin to work on this? How can I put my mind around something so vast?
So a couple of things come to mind. I talk a lot about tropical forests, and that's because I started this whole journey, this new journey, by asking the question, what's the number one solution to climate change? And what's the number one solution to the extinction crisis? When I started this work in research in 2014 and work in 2015, I was still coming out of that mindset of the environmentalist literature of the previous decade.
Sure.
And so I thought, okay, well, I know we have two crises. If we fight both of them, if there's one solution for each one, great. And I started reading up on emissions reductions from shutting down coal plants versus electric cars versus you name it, recycling.
Right.
And I knew that area pretty well already. That's where I had been for 10 years.
Sure.
And I compared it to the emissions that were coming out of incinerating tropical forests. And that was because I had looked at global mappings for where biodiversity is located. And I didn't know, as a big environmentalist, I didn't know that half or more of all the biodiversity on our planet lives in about 5% of the total planet in the tropical forest system.
Yes.
When you look at those mappings, it's as I brought these, by the way,
Right.
if you want to see them, but it's as clear as a bell. Okay, that's where the productivity is, that's where the diversity is. But then you look at the carbon mappings of our planet, and it's the same basic outline, that the forest systems, same reason we hang out indoors with air conditioning and running water and all that stuff. A forest is sort of like that in the natural world. So protecting tropical forests is the biggest simple step that you can engage in to make a global positive difference. And I didn't know that. I was a big voice in the local green energy movement to get Austin Energy to clean up its act and do even better, be more aspirational, and so on and so forth. And the goals that we pitched in 2009 and 10 were exceeded by 2015, and we were the people that were radical in 2010. And all of these things, there are positive things happening. But when you look at, for instance, the amount of just greenhouse gas emissions, well, let me try to take one more step back. So tropical forests then have more values, if you were to list all the reasons why you should protect and restore them, than any other solution that we can engage in.
More bang for your buck.
Exactly. It's a super multifaceted solution. It's the biggest bang for the buck. So the carbon that lives in these trees, because trees are about half carbon, and these forests are, as Ben was talking about, a 1,200-year-old tree is not uncommon in an old-growth tropical forest. The Amazon, some people believe goes back to before the dinosaurs went extinct. The tropical forests in Asia definitely go back that far, and the tropical forests in Africa have to go back that far. So those ecosystems are super carbon dense, and the amount of carbon that's been released just by the Amazon fires since June in the last 2 to 4 months I believe is equal to about 10 years of Austin's complete community-wide footprint. 1.5 million people with cars and trash cans and coal plants and chip manufacturing, all of the emissions coming out of this city. We've created more of a problem for the atmosphere just in a few months of burning the Amazon than Austin can create in 10 years. And so the scale of density of these benefits, or these bang for the buck, multifaceted things, exceeds 100x often what we're accustomed to when we're trying to change our light bulbs or switch over to a cool car or whatever it is. And then the price of helping, to sort of round that out, the price of helping can be under $1 per acre. Some projects are a lot more expensive, but because you're helping to protect undeveloped lands and undeveloped economies, you can assist the nonprofit groups that are doing this work in the third world. And so these land values are pennies on the dollar. There's a project we were promoting a couple of years ago in the Congo that was 27 cents an acre. Right now we're doing one that's 76 cents an acre in the Amazon. It helps 220 indigenous communities get land rights to their ancestral lands. And it's 6.1 million acre project in Peru. It's phenomenally great. And I could go on and on and on about all the things in that. But that's one thing you can do. The other thing, the quick answer is I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a better way, but biospheric thinking. That you really start to engage in in this recognition that you're surrounded by living things.
Yes.
And when you look at anything in front of you, whether it's your iPhone or your shoes, it's because of the living things on this planet that preceded us that made all this possible. And there was no life on land 600 million years ago. It's all in motion, and we are the result of a long story. We've accidentally, without knowing it, sort of lost touch with that story and have destroyed the majority of that system in the last few decades as population has grown. But anyway, biospheric thinking, that you can make a huge difference by trying to enrich the soil in your backyard with compost, trying to make sure that you don't waste things in the same way that you've done before. You think more about the plastic that's going into the ocean. You try to eliminate these things that are affecting other organisms, other living things, whether it's a microbe or a dolphin or a tree.
Right.
All of it is critical to our future.
And so when we're thinking about the process of changing our perspective and change it, that's the thing that excites me about that. So are you looking at it at the Because you did this from the entrepreneurial level, and now you're doing it through the nonprofit level and through the educational level. Tell me your Chris Searles' route.
Well, I believe that we are, as I've said, it's the 12th hour. It's not the 11th hour now.
Mm-hmm.
We're on the other side of the bad news. We have to decide what we want the future to be like.
Right.
And culture change, I think, is the most important element. And the other thing, if we get a chance to talk more at length, I want to hear more thoughts from you about this, but we really have to, as grassroots-ish, relatively articulate people that can figure out relatively complicated things, just like a lot of other better resourced people out there, we have to call on the world's wealthiest people now to change. That's really the only way I think that we can expect for things to shift at the scale that's required, and it has to happen real fast. It's maybe not the most realistic thing to ask of the world today.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is. I mean, it may be unrealistic, but I'm idealistic and I'm an optimist. And I really think if we really got down and I was able to talk with and were able to continue to go, what is enough?
Right.
Everything in my life. I mean, are you kidding me? I live like a freaking king.
Yeah.
I live in a palace. It's 3 bedrooms. It's air conditioned. I'm so wealthy, I piss into potable water.
And my food is cold all day.
And my food is cold all day. And I have all that. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, kings.
Yeah.
And here I am, and just in a rental home, and this. But yet.
I'm totally with
beautiful.
you.
It is an extraordinary. And what is enough, Dennis?
Yeah.
What would enough be? Would if I had 3 more zeros on the other side of the decimal when it moved? Would that be enough? Would it do? And when we begin getting into hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of personal wealth, and that, where does it ever? It's a subject I want to explore.
Yeah, I mean, I assume if you're Jeff Bezos, the idea of having more than anyone else is ultimately the most appealing thing in the world, and he's just continuing to climb as high as he can. I think most of us can't ever access that feeling, so we just don't know what that's like. Same with anybody that's up there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I asked that.
So I have sympathy or empathy for not understanding what it's like to be in that seat, that driver's seat, where you're like, well, listen, I blink and everyone takes notice, Yeah.
I can't imagine. You're absolutely right. I mean, but you had some of that when you were a musician, and you had the adoration and the people around you, and you had some of that. Was that a difficult transition to move through?
To become someone that no one admired?
Yeah, from that into and now we get to okay, I get to be an environmentalist, conservationist. Okay, what?
Yeah. A semi-academic revolutionary.
Yeah.
I don't know. So will Ben Livingston's show be tied to this one? If I talk about him, is that okay?
Yeah, talk about
that would be
Ben.
perfect.
Absolutely.
Let's see. He was. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. He was talking about. Oh, when he sang that final song.
Yeah.
Ben Livingston, when he sang that final song, I mean, it transformed everything, right?
Yeah.
In the control room in there, and in here for you guys, and then Ben, and when it finished,
right
you
here.
could see. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that feeling too as a performer, like when you do something that's magical and it goes well, suddenly you're in a different state. But for him to sing when he sang deeper, in that falsetto, I mean, that is an opening of your soul, your heart.
Yeah.
That you don't get in most normal conversation. With you, I think, especially after seeing that, I'm going to try a little harder to be that way.
Good.
But with most people, every day, music really liberates that connection to how you feel, how you really feel. And if you can make that a triumphant feeling or a deep, committed feeling for a person, that's where that adoration, I guess, comes from. People go to you because they really depend on that. Man, this person's amazing,
Yeah.
What's funny is as a musician, when you do it all the time, and day after day on the road, and you have to play the same songs and things like that. Sometimes, you're trying to just make sure you don't mess up. You're not feeling it the same way that the audience is, of course.
Right.
And it's a funny dynamic for me. So I sort of prefer to be in a little more of a, I guess, a risky space.
Yeah.
Where I don't know what the heck I'm doing, you know,
Yep.
most of the time, and I'm trying to communicate in new ways about what I consider to be new ideas, with the idea that what we were talking about the other day, we can progress up another stair step or two.
Exactly.
As a worldview, or
Yep.
in our worldview as a species, and we can do it quickly. I think it's going to take all kinds of things to do that, but anyway, I think
But if you had to live,
it doesn't feel bad.
If we had to live at a transformational moment when it was all hands on deck. Okay, people, as a species, as a planet, are we going to survive? Are we not? Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the message we need to be talking about, and it's no fun to sort of throw that out there, and it's also so big and unwieldy. It's like, you know, how do you say that convincingly? Where's Martin Luther King Jr. when we need him? You know, we need somebody who can really, really orate around these ideas right now.
This is one thing I'm interested in right now, especially in the political spectrum, and trying to get the consciousness around this, is that how do we say it in an encapsulated way that can move people? Because these are some really, this entire ecosystem is a marvelous, interconnected. I mean, when you look at the body, I mean, what Ben Livingston was talking about, and with the work that he's going through in the healing of muscular dystrophy and all that he's working on, and the physical, what a body does is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Or what this planet is an extraordinary complex, and it can't be dealt with it is happening, it isn't happening.
Right.
We're talking about some very complex issues that have to be addressed on multiple fronts. Now, can we digest it into something that can move people?
Yeah. I don't know that there's one way, you know?
No.
I think the word biointegrity is a lucky break for me.
I know. How did that come about?
It came about just through trying to find a good domain name for the project.
Nice.
So the turning point in that project was I had done a bunch of research. You know, I had 10 years of background in consumer products and advocacy and events and education on green lifestyle, basically,
right.
and making consumerism better for the planet. The goal was to make it actually beneficial.
Right.
And so we had to stop doing certain things like burning coal and start doing things like composting. You know, trying to get all these things to be cool and energizing and easy to facilitate and all that was what I was doing. I didn't know much about ecosystems, and when I did this research to see, you know, so where's the biggest carbon bang for the buck on the planet?
Yep.
You know, it's just so clear. It's so easy to see on a map, which is one of the ways I think we accomplish what you're talking about, is the visuals, the global visuals are stark. The contrast is stark in terms of how things are so super concentrated in the tropics.
Yeah.
Like about 75% of global biological productivity is in the tropics. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Most people don't know that, but you can see it on NASA's mapping. You can see it in the stills. You can see it in the animations of a year or 20 years of satellite data. But so what I learned was, okay, so protecting the most biodiverse ecosystems, the tropical forests, protecting the most life is the biggest solution to climate change. Wow, that's cool. So I'm looking for a domain name that says something about protecting life,
right,
as a solution, as a step forward, and that's how I ended up with biointegrity.
Wonderful. So what are you doing with it, and where are you going? What kinds of things are on your agenda as far as you can see? Now, again, of course, it's going to continue to evolve in this, but just to give me some perspective.
I have a bunch of different projects I'm sort of managing in. A little bit here and a little bit there. Mm-hmm. So in the spring, I did a thing called Strings in the Park. That's a concert series. The idea there is just to, this is such a meaty type of conversation. Yeah. And before the Amazon fires, you couldn't really talk about sort of biological issues in climate conversation wasn't even as easy to have as it is 3 months later.
Right.
So the idea of Strings in the Park is that we're trying to do an event that's just open to anyone. It's not a political event, of course. And that gives me a chance. I bring a great artist out and put strings with this great artist's songs and do a concert in the park. And people come out to enjoy their time in the park. So first they engage in nature, just enjoying themselves outdoors, which is rare. Not so much in Austin, but in general, people don't do that.
Exactly.
And then I get to introduce the artist. So in my 2-minute intro, I take about 30 seconds and say, we're doing globally strategic environmentalism. And with that, we've already been able to offset, by protecting the most important ecosystems on the planet, we've been able to offset Austin's community-wide carbon footprint for more than 5 years. And we've done this with less than $500,000 in fundraising by directing it strategically to the most globally important places. Then I've also got a project called allcreation.org, because these are part of the biointegrity umbrella.
Yeah.
All Creation is a tribute and also a real heartfelt effort. My father was a minister in Austin for 25 years and a teacher for 20 years after that, and a minister for 10 or 20 years before that.
Wow.
Career, good guy, took care of a lot of people and did it because of his Christian values, but he was also as Buddhist as he was Christian. It's just he hailed from a generation where Buddhism wasn't really, they didn't really know what that was. That was just weird. It was from another part of the world. But he was this very open, very meditative, very complete person. And when I first learned about, the green stuff we talked about when I was up in New York, sort of on the journey to figure out where I was going to go after music, I discovered all these great ideas about how to fix the underlying major problems for human beings, the degradation of our life support system. Mm-hmm. And I thought, great, well, I'll go back to the Sunday school classes that, I was in when I was a kid and talk to all these people in the church that raised me.
Sure.
And they'll love this because this is what they taught me to do, take care of the creation, basically. And